Okay, so have you ever imagined a world where scientific breakthroughs aren't just helped along by AI,
Yeah.
but where AI actually takes the lead,
Right.
conceiving the research questions, designing the experiments, even writing up the findings all on its own?
Wow.
It sounds kind of crazy, right? Like a leap into the unknown, but that's precisely what we're going to be diving into today.
Oh, cool.
We're taking a close look at this super interesting research paper called The AI Scientist Towards Fully Automated, Open-Ended Scientific Discovery.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a mouthful,
It is.
but it's really fascinating.
Yeah, so this paper basically lays out this whole system for an AI that can, do scientific research all by itself.
Right.
Starting with coming up with the ideas and going all the way to actually writing a publishable paper.
Wow.
And what we're going to do today is we're going to try to understand how this AI scientist works.
Okay.
What it can actually do, and
Sure.
what kind of implications this might have, for the future of research, especially machine learning.
Yeah, and so to do this deep dive,
Yeah.
we're looking at the research paper itself,
Right.
but then also some examples of actual research that it's produced,
I guess
so we
so.
can really see what it's capable of.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the basics.
Okay.
The paper talks about these three main stages.
Right.
Idea generation, then experimental iteration, and finally paper write-up.
Yeah.
So let's start at the very beginning. How does this AI come up with new research ideas?
So it's pretty cool the way they do this idea generation phase.
Yeah.
They kind of borrow this concept from evolutionary biology.
Oh, interesting.
So the AI scientist, it starts with this really simple starting point,
Okay.
like a basic idea.
Yeah.
The paper gives this example of, training a small language model on Shakespeare's works.
Yeah.
So think of this as like a seed idea.
Okay.
And then it uses LLMs, the large language models,
Right.
to kind of mutate this seed idea and generate a bunch of new related research directions.
Okay.
And then it builds up this whole archive of all these potential ideas.
So it's not just right.
Randomly guessing?
No. It's evolving ideas from a base.
Got it.
And it's not just vague concepts.
Yeah,
It's really detailed stuff from the get-go.
Okay.
So each idea that the AI comes up with, it includes a description of what the research would be, a plan for how they would do the experiments.
Right.
And even how interesting, novel, and feasible it thinks the idea is.
Really?
Yeah, and it uses this thing called chain of thought reasoning to refine these ideas,
Okay.
which is basically where it walks through the logic of the idea step by step.
Okay.
And it also does this self-reflection thing.
Self-reflection. That's really interesting.
Oh, right?
How does an AI reflect on its own ideas?
So basically, they prompt the language model to be a critic of its own ideas.
Oh.
So it
Yeah.
looks for weaknesses, things that could be better,
Right.
maybe alternative approaches.
Got it.
And then based on that, it actually revises the research direction before even touching any code.
So it's like editing itself.
Yeah, it's like having a built-in editor. Okay, that's super cool.
Yeah.
And then there's this other part where it makes sure it's not just repeating old research.
Yeah.
It's it checks against existing research, right?
Right. So it connects to the Semantic Scholar API,
Okay.
which is basically like this online tool that lets it access all these scientific papers.
Okay.
And it also has access to the web.
Got it.
So it can compare its ideas to what's already out there.
Right.
And if an idea is too similar, it just gets rid of it.
Yeah.
So it can focus on the new stuff.
Makes sense. So, okay, it comes up with an idea.
Yep.
It refines it through self-critique, make sure it's new.
Right.
What happens next?
So then it goes into the experimental iteration phase.
Okay.
So once it has an idea and a basic plan,
Yeah.
it actually starts running the experiments.
Got it.
And it uses tools like Aider to help plan out a sequence of experiments.
So it's not just one experiment.
Right. You can plan out a bunch of connected steps to test its hypothesis.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, we all know things don't always go perfectly in experiments.
Oh, yeah. Especially in my line of work.
So how does it handle unexpected errors or problems?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So the system is built to be super resilient. So if something goes wrong,
Yeah.
like a coding error or whatever,
Right.
the error message actually gets fed back into Aider.
Okay.
And Aider tries to figure out what's wrong, fix the code, and then rerun the experiment.
So it's debugging itself?
Exactly. And it'll even try this up to 4 times.
Wow.
So it's really persistent.
That's impressive. And then after each experiment, it doesn't just stop there, right?
Right.
It actually records what happened.
Yeah, so after every experiment, whether it works or not, the AI scientist takes notes on the results.
Okay.
Kind of like a lab journal.
Yeah.
Right now, it mostly focuses on the text outputs,
Okay.
but they say in the paper that future versions could analyze visualizations and other types of data too.
Wow. So it's learning as it goes.
Yeah, it's adapting, based
Nice.
on what it finds out.
Okay, that's so cool.
Yeah,
So that's like real science, right?
it really is.
Like the scientific method.
Totally.
Okay, so then we get to the final phase, the paper write-up.
Right.
So how does it go from all these notes and results
Yeah.
to a full-on scientific paper?
So they give the AI scientist this standard LaTeX template,
Okay,
which is basically a pre-formatted document for scientific papers
got it.
with all the sections and style guidelines.
Okay.
And then it takes all the information from the previous stages, the research idea, the experiment plan, the results, the notes,
Right.
and it fills in each section of the template.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is.
Writing a paper isn't just about presenting the data, right?
No, it's way more than that.
It's got to be structured with arguments and evidence, and it has to follow a specific format.
Right, it's a whole art.
And then get this.
What?
Once the paper is drafted, it starts an automated review process.
Oh, wow.
It uses another LLM to critique its own work.
So it's like peer review, but by itself.
Yeah, like a built-in critic.
That's wild.
So it's like a complete research cycle all on its own.
It really is.
It's amazing. Okay, so we talked about the phases, but what kind of research has this AI scientist actually produced?
Right, so they tested it out on a few different areas within machine learning.
Right.
Diffusion modeling, which is used to generate stuff like images.
Right.
Transformer-based language modeling, which is behind a lot of the advanced language models we see.
Yeah.
And the study of learning dynamics, which is about how neural networks learn.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that the cost was surprisingly low.
It was shockingly low.
Yeah.
Like less than $15 per paper.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's really crazy. And it means that this kind of system could like democratize research
Right.
because it's so much cheaper.
Yeah. Okay, so it's producing research, but how do we know it's any good?
Right. So they had to figure out a way to evaluate it without human researchers being directly involved.
Yeah.
So they built this automated reviewer,
Right.
which is basically another LLM, and they showed that this automated reviewer's judgments were really close to those of human reviewers at a top machine learning conference.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. So it's not just doing the research.
Yeah.
It's judging its own research, too.
And doing a good job at it.
Apparently so.
Okay, let's get into some specific examples.
Okay.
You mentioned diffusion modeling earlier.
Right.
There was a paper titled Adaptive Dual-Scale Denoising for Low-Dimensional Diffusion Models.
Yeah.
So what problem was the AI trying to solve here?
So with these low-dimensional diffusion models, one of the big challenges is balancing the global structure of the data
Okay.
with the fine details in the samples you generate.
Got it.
So the AI identified this as something it could try to improve.
Okay, and what was the solution?
So the AI scientist came up with this new architecture that uses two parallel processing paths called branches.
Okay.
One branch, the global branch, focuses on the overall structure,
Okay.
and the other, the local branch, works with a higher resolution version to capture the details.
Right.
And the really clever part is there's this weighting mechanism that adjusts the influence of each branch at different points.
So it's like switching focus.
Exactly, depending on what's needed at that stage.
Okay, that's pretty correct.
Yeah. They tested it on some simple 2D data sets, images of circles, dinosaurs, lions, moons.
Okay.
And the results showed big improvements in the quality of the generated samples.
How did they measure that?
They used KL divergence, which is a way to measure how different the generated data is from real data.
Okay.
And they saw reductions of up to like 12.8% on the dinosaur data set.
That's a pretty big jump.
It is.
Did the AI do anything interesting with visualizing the results?
Yeah, actually it did.
Okay.
It used some standard plots,
Right.
but it also came up with its own visualizations
Oh, wow.
to show how the weights between the branches changed over time.
So it's figuring out the best way to explain its findings.
It really is. That's what's so cool about this.
Were there any quirks or funny things about this project?
Well, there were a few interesting things.
Okay.
So apparently the AI tends to be a bit optimistic about its results.
Oh, really?
Yeah, even when maybe it shouldn't be.
Give me an example.
So on the moon's dataset, the performance actually got worse,
Oh.
but the AI described it as a 3.3% improvement.
Oh, so it's got a positive spin?
It does.
That's funny.
Yeah, and also some stuff from its internal logs ended up in the paper,
Oh, okay.
like referring to results as run 2.
Oh, that's not very scientific.
Not really, no, and sometimes it just didn't finish the related work section.
So even the AI needs an editor sometimes.
It seems that way, yeah.
Did the reviewers catch those things?
Yeah, the automated reviewer pointed out the high computational cost, the limited data sets, the lack of theoretical explanation.
Right.
And in the end, it recommended rejecting the paper.
So still room for improvement.
Definitely.
Okay, let's move on to another example.
Okay.
Style fusion. Adaptive multi-style generation in character-level language models.
Yes.
This one's about writing styles, right?
Yeah, so this research is all about making language models more aware of different writing styles
Oh,
and being able to generate text in those styles consistently.
God, so like being able to write like Shakespeare.
Exactly, or in a more formal style or a casual style.
Right, so how did it do that?
They came up with this thing called the multi-style adapter,
Okay.
which uses these things called style embeddings.
Style embeddings.
Yeah, so think of them like numerical representations of different writing styles.
Okay.
And it has a style classification component that figures out what style it's dealing with.
Okay.
And then there's a style adapter module that actually modifies the language model itself.
So it's like teaching the language model about different styles.
It's like giving it a style guide.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did it work?
Yeah, they tested it on data sets with different styles like Shakespeare and Whist, Sex 8, Text 8.
Okay.
And the results were pretty good. The style fusion model could generate text in a consistent style
Right.
while still performing well in general language modeling tasks.
Yeah. So it wasn't just good at style, it was still a good language model.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it even improved the validation loss.
Which means...
Which means it was getting better at generalizing.
Okay, so a good outcome overall.
Yeah, pretty much. But there was a trade-off.
What was that?
So the style fusion model was a bit slower than the baseline model.
Because it had to do all this extra work with the style.
Exactly. It needed more computing power.
Okay, so better style, but a bit slower.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's talk about the research on learning dynamics.
Okay.
Specifically, this thing called grokking.
Right.
The AI scientists wrote several papers on this, but for people who don't know what's grokking.
So grokking is this really interesting thing that happens in deep learning.
Okay.
So you train a model for a long time, and at first, it's not so good at generalizing to new data.
Okay.
Even if it's perfect on the training data.
Right.
But then suddenly it just gets way better.
Really?
Yeah, it's like it suddenly understands the underlying principles.
It's like a light bulb moment.
It really is.
That's fascinating. So one paper was grokking accelerated, layer-wise learning rates for transformer generalization.
Right.
What did they do in this research?
So they looked at whether using different learning rates for different parts of the transformer model could speed up grokking.
Okay.
The idea is that different parts of the network learn at different speeds.
Got it.
Some fine-tuning the learning rates could help.
Okay, and did it work?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
They tested it on tasks like modular arithmetic and permutations.
Right.
And they found that their methods significantly reduced the training time needed for grokking to happen.
Wow.
And on a really hard permutation task, they got near perfect accuracy.
Compared to?
Compared to using a uniform learning rate, which didn't do so well.
So that's a big win for efficiency.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, another paper was MDL meets grokking, unveiling the role of compression in emergent generalization.
Right.
What was this one about?
This one was about the connection between the minimal description length principle and grokking.
Okay.
So MDL says that good models are ones that can compress the data well.
Right.
So they developed this new technique to estimate the MDL of a neural network.
Okay.
And they looked at how it related to grokking.
Yeah.
They found that for modular arithmetic tasks, when the model suddenly started generalizing,
Yeah.
it also went through a rapid compression.
So the two things were connected.
It seems so, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was less clear for the permutation task.
Okay, so still some mysteries to solve.
Oh, yeah, there always are.
Okay, last one on grokking.
Okay.
Data augmentation unlocks grokking in algorithmic reasoning.
Right.
What's data augmentation?
So data augmentation is a technique where you kind of modify the training data
Okay.
to make the model more robust.
Got it.
So in this paper, they looked at whether specific data augmentation techniques could speed up grokking for modular arithmetic problems.
Okay.
They tried things like reversing the order of numbers in an equation
Okay.
or negating them.
And what did they find?
They found that it actually worked. Yeah, they saw big reductions in training time
Mm-hmm.
for addition, subtraction, division.
Okay.
But different augmentation strategies worked better for different operations.
So it's on one size fits all.
Right, you got to tailor it to the problem.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen a bunch of examples. The AI scientist can generate research and tackle some pretty complex stuff.
Yeah, it can.
What are the big picture implications of this?
Well, I think the potential is huge.
Yeah.
Like the paper says, this could really change how we do research.
Okay.
You could make it much cheaper and easier for people to do science,
Right.
especially if they don't have a lot of resources.
That's really important.
Yeah, and it could speed up the whole process of discovery,
Yeah.
especially in fields like machine learning where you can test ideas with code pretty quickly.
Right. And it's not just about doing the research, it's also about writing it up.
Oh, yeah, that's key.
Because even if we have an AI that's making discoveries,
Yeah,
we need to be able to understand them
exactly.
and build on them.
And the paper argues that writing papers is really important for that.
Okay.
It makes the research understandable for humans.
Right.
And it allows for evaluation through peer review.
Right.
Even if it's automated in this case.
Yeah, and the cost effectiveness is really amazing.
It is less than $15 a paper. It's crazy.
It is. And the computing power they used wasn't even that much.
Right. They ran hundreds of experiments on a single GPU node
Okay.
over a week.
So it's not like you need a supercomputer.
No, not at all.
But of course there are limitations, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What are some of the things they need to improve?
So one big one is vision.
Okay.
The current AI can't really deal with visual stuff in the papers.
Like figures and graphs.
Right. Or complex plots.
Got it.
It also has trouble citing prior work.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes it makes up references.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and while the cost per paper is low,
Right.
if you're doing a ton of research, the overall cost could still be high.
Makes sense. And they also mentioned the data sets were limited.
Yeah, and the theoretical depth wasn't always there.
So those are all things to work on.
Definitely.
Did they talk about future directions for this research?
They did.
What are some of the things they mentioned?
So they want to scale it up to tackle bigger, more complex problems
Okay.
and make the experimental design more adaptive.
Right.
But they also talked about extending this approach to other fields,
Oh, wow.
like beyond machine learning.
Like what?
Well, they mentioned things like robotic automation for labs.
Okay.
So the AI could actually conduct physical experiments.
Wow. That's like next level.
It really is.
So we could have AI scientists doing all sorts of research.
It's possible.
That's incredible.
Okay, so after this deep dive into the AI scientist, what's the main takeaway?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that this is a big step towards fully automated scientific discovery,
Yep.
at least in machine learning.
Right.
The AI scientist has shown that it can generate ideas, design experiments, analyze data, and write papers,
Right.
all on its own and in a super efficient way. Yeah, it really makes you think about the future of science.
It does?
Like, what does this mean for human scientists?
Yeah.
Will we become more like curators of AI discoveries?
That's a good question.
Or will we find new ways to collaborate with AI?
Who knows?
It feels like we're at the beginning of a huge shift in how science is done.
I think so.
And the potential for faster innovation is both exciting and kind of scary.
Yeah. It's definitely something to think about.
It'll be interesting to see where this all goes.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to see what they come up with next.
Me too.
All right, well, that's our deep dive into the AI scientist.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
This is really fascinating stuff.
It is.
I hope everyone listening learned something new.
I hope so too.
And maybe even had their mind blown a little.
Yeah, a little mind-blowing is always good.
It is.
All right.
Okay, see you next time.
See ya.